in 1978, a young attorney, Linda McKeever Bullard, filed a lawsuit on behalf of a group of people in Houston where a suburban middle-class neighborhood was targeted to have a municipal landfill established right next door. She recruited a young Alabama-born sociology professor at Texas Southern University with a PhD from Iowa State and a background in urban research to gather data in support of her case. The professor happened to be her husband, Dr. Robert D. Bullard. Being, quote, drafted, as he puts it, into conducting research for this legal case determined the direction of a pioneering career in environmental justice that has now spanned 32 years. You see, 82% of the residents of the Houston neighborhood threatened by that landfill were African American. And the data Bullard collected became the first comprehensive study of environmental racism ever conducted. He found that although Black people made up only 25% of Houston's population, 100% of city-owned garbage dumps were in their neighborhoods. So were 3 of 4 privately owned landfills and 6 out of 8 city-owned garbage incinerators. The staggering injustice revealed by those findings hooked Dr. Bullard on a line of inquiry that helped open the door of the environmental justice movement, breaking it out of the closet. On behalf of everyone at UNC Asheville, I want to welcome you this evening. Our cause for gathering tonight is to honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose life and work still today stir us to action and movement toward justice. There can be no better speaker for tonight than someone who was perhaps Dr. King's soulmate, Dr. Robert D. Bullard, who has become known as the international environmental justice leader, and environmental justice has become known as arguably the most pressing issue of our time. Through his work, he reminds us that the population most vulnerable to the dangers of environmental hazards and global warming are children. It's our children. And the most vulnerable of our children are children of color. In his own words, he says, if we protect the most vulnerable in our society, we protect everybody. I am grateful for Dr. Bullard's work, and I am awed to be in his presence this evening. And I welcome you all to what I know is going to be an inspirational and perhaps disturbing talk that will spur us to take action in Asheville and Western North Carolina. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rory James, Director of the Intercultural Center and Multicultural Student Programs. And before we begin our program and go any further, a lot of people put a lot of hard work into putting on not only this day and having our guest speaker, Dr. Bullard, but also the week of activities that we are celebrating this week. Monday we had our day of service, and it was good to see students out at our various service projects that we had throughout Asheville and participating in a peace march that took place on Monday. And yesterday we had a unity service in a grotto, which is co-sponsored by our campus ministry. And so if you look in your booklet, your program booklet, you'll see many of the UNC Asheville sponsors and the community sponsors. And I want to send a special acknowledgement out to Dwayne Barton. If Dwayne is in the audience, can you wave your hand? Because you're a person to know. Thank you for working with our students, and thank you for opening up the community and having them to receive our students in the partnership that we have. So thank you for that. And a very special thanks to Bunny and her staff at Cultural and Special Events for helping to collaborate with us to bring wonderful guest lecturers to our campus. And students, just remember, it's really a privilege to have a company like Dr. Bullard on campus. And please take advantage of the many speakers and the programs that are sponsored for you here at this campus. So thank you, Bunny, for your programming, and thank you for all you have done for us. So. And as I mentioned, once again, a big thank you to the community sponsors again for making this possible, the Day of Service possible, and with our Special Programs Department and Student Affairs. It's good to volunteer with the community, and that's what UNC Asheville is strong in. And so thank you, students, and thank you, community partners, for the opportunities that you have presented. So I'm not going to talk any longer, but I thought it was only fitting that we have a student actually introduce Dr. Bullard, a student who has studied his work. And so I present to you a junior from UNC Asheville, Tiffany Yates.
Good evening, students, faculty, staff, and community members. Dr. Robert D. Bullard is the author of 15 books that address the issues of sustainable development, environmental racism, urban land use, industrial facility siting, community reinvestment, housing, transportation, climate justice, emergency response, smart growth, and regional equity. He is the Ware Distinguished Professor of Sociology and Director of the Environmental Justice Resource Center at Clark Atlanta University. He is also one of the planners of the first and second National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit, and previously served on President Clinton's transition team in the Natural Resources and Environment Cluster, as well as the US EPA National Environment Justice Advisory Council, where he chaired the Health and Research Subcommittee. Dr. Bullard has also testified and served as an expert witness in dozens of civil rights cases over the past decade. When I began my study of environmental ethics, I was introduced to Dr. Bullard's work. I found it so intriguing that I decided to focus my undergraduate research, and that the focus should be on environmental racism and environmental justice, how victims of environmental racism could incur environmental justice. Dr. Bullard's various works and groundbreaking ideas were vital to my research. So it is with great joy that I present the preeminent scholar in environmental justice, Dr. Robert Bullard.
Thank you very much. Good evening. You know, that really makes a professor an author. Feels good when you hear a student say that they read your work and it has inspired them. And it's important to just acknowledge the fact that as a teacher, you never know who you'll touch and how your work will impact on an individual basis as well as group basis. Good evening. I'm a sociologist by training. I'm an environmental sociologist. And I'm proud to say that I am an environmentalist. And I've been black most of my life. I was born in Alabama, South Alabama, and I spent so many years in California, and I decided I wanted to come back home. And so I left California and moved to Atlanta, and then I discovered Atlanta is becoming Los Angeles in terms of the air pollution, in terms of the suburban sprawl, in terms of the traffic and the gridlock. So this evening, I'm going to talk with you on a subject called Growing Smarter, Achieving Healthy Communities and Environmental Justice for All. And these are some titles of my books. I like to write books. I like to see my name in print. You know what I'm saying? I mean, is that wrong? That's nothing. You know what I'm saying? I just like to see my name in print. So what I do, I write. You know, teachers teach, preachers preach, writers write. So these are some titles of the books that are Invisible Houston, Dumping in Dixie, In Search of the New South, Growth and Decline of a Sunbelt Boomtown. I wrote 2 books on Houston. It wasn't just enough to write one. I wrote 2. You know, Houston is special. Texas is a whole different country. Confronting Environmental Racism, Residential Apartheid. This is a book about housing and residential patterns and what what's involved in creating neighborhoods and how place gets racialized. And somehow when you associate that place being racialized, in some cases, physically, a line can be drawn. Not a wall, but a line can be drawn, and invisibly, certain things are denied. That's what residential apartheid deals with, American style. Unequal protection, just transportation. I wrote a book in 1997 called Just Transportation, Dismantling Race and Class Barriers to Mobility. It deals with the fact that transportation touches everything. And so, you know, it's not by accident one of the first civil rights cases that was handled in front of the Supreme Court that codified Jim Crow, Plessy v. Ferguson, was about transportation and civil rights. Plessy, get on the back of the bus. Codified Jim Crow, separate and unequal. And so I tried to get the book out for the 100th anniversary of Plessy. It came out in 1997, not 96. You know, I was close. Sprawl City. That book is about Atlanta. You know, you look in the dictionary and look up sprawl, it'll say, see Atlanta. After the 2002, was it 2002? Let me see. The Sustainable, World Summit of Sustainable Development. World Summit of Sustainable, after the summit in Johannesburg, I decided, look at the sustainability issues around the world and look at what's happening in terms of issues of economics, the issue of poverty, the issue of dealing with scarcities, water. You know, in some places, water, potable water is more valuable than oil. You know, we can live without oil, but can we live without water? Most people I know drink water. So that book is about, it's just sustainability's development in an unequal world. It's an MIT Press book written in 2002. Highway robbery, that's my transportation racism book. You know, it's a follow-up to Just Transportation. Highway robbery, transportation racism, new routes to equity. That book is about the fact that we spend so much money building highways and roads, in some cases bridges to nowhere, that we do not develop our alternatives to driving and public transportation. I was in Copenhagen in December at COP15 at the climate meeting. 100,000 people there. 10,000 people got arrested. I didn't go 8,000 miles to get arrested. I was there, but I wasn't going to get arrested. I did my protests in the 60s and arrested. Anyway, the fact is that Copenhagen is a transit-friendly place, a bicycle-friendly place, a walkable place. It's very green. I mean, public transit is not transportation for losers and minorities and poor people and, you know what I'm saying? Transit, that's for people to move around who don't have to drive and don't want to drive. Growing Smarter, Achieving Livable Communities, Environmental Justice, and Regional Equity. This is a book about smart growth, but it's also about fair growth. We can grow smart, but if we're doing some of the same things that's creating inequity and building on inequity, that's not smart. That's the same old dumb growth. So we had to add another component to deal with growing smarter and achieving livable and healthy communities and environmental justice and building with the environment. The Black metropolis in the 21st century basically deals with cities that are undergoing transformation and what's happening in most of our major cities. People are now moving back to the cities. And it means that cities that once were given up on, they're being reborn. You know, Washington, D.C. is a fabulous city. And Atlanta is a fabulous city. New Orleans is a fabulous city. You know, it used to be 70%, 75% African American. Now those cities are like 54%, 53%, 52%. So what's happening in terms of black communities, in terms of neighborhoods, as they get gentrified, as people get pushed out? So we're talking about this. Race, Place, and Environmental Justice after Hurricane Katrina. That's the Katrina book. You know, working in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, 25 years before Katrina hit. But a lot of the issues that were issues before the storm, before the flood, that exacerbated the problems that were created by the flooding. And yes, what happened in New Orleans was an unnatural disaster. It was a lot of the problems that were created in New Orleans in terms of the Katrina, because Katrina was a Category 3 storm that missed New Orleans. The levee breach flooded. God didn't do it. The Army Corps of Engineers didn't do what they're supposed to do. This was a man-made disaster. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to call stories. I'm going to call them out because I have tenure. I'm going back home tomorrow. So when we talk about what I do, I love what I do. I have a good job. I teach one class a year. I have an endowed chair. I get a chance to travel, meet interesting people. I don't get harassed by my administration. They let me do basically what I do because I tell them I'll bring good notoriety to the school. Because every time I write an article, every time I write a grant, every time I write a book, the name goes on it. So my job is to connect the dots. When you connect the dots, it's all about health. I've written 15 books, but it's just one book. It's all about health. And the way I define health is the way the World Health Organization defines health. Not a medical model, but health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. You can't have a healthy community if you have poverty, if you have crime, if you have drug infested, if you have pollution that's just killing people. And so when we talk about making communities whole and having a healthy community, that means a holistic definition of health. And of course, it involves health care also. And so when we talk about the environment is everything. Where we live, work, play, go to school, worship, as well as the physical and natural world. That doesn't leave a whole lot out. So when you talk about the environment, we're talking about the environment out there and the environment in this room. Because it is possible to have an unhealthy environment, a sick environment. And it's also possible to have a sick building, sick schools, where the air quality inside is 10 times worse than the air pollution outside. A lot of our schools right now are sick, that need to be greened up, cleaned up right now. So no discussion, no debate. So when we talk about this whole question of environmental justice principle, the environmental justice principle basically is based on this idea that all communities have a right to equal protection of our environmental laws, health laws, housing laws, civil rights laws, transportation laws. So everybody has a right to clean air, clean water, safe food. This is a basic human right. Not just based on the fact that, oh, if you got money, you can vote with your feet and leave a dangerous situation. Nobody, and especially no company, has a right to poison people. A company gets a charter from the state to operate. It's an artificial animal. It is not a person, it's an entity. But what we have done is we have given humanity to corporations and given them a permit, and a permit is nothing more than a license to pollute. And so when we talk about bringing some sanity to this whole situation, that's the work that I do. I'm not anti-business. We need jobs. I'm not anti-corporate. We need work. We need people to have work at a livable wage. But what we say is that people should not have to die for work. 1968, I graduated from college. I marched and demonstrated when Dr. King was killed. Dr. King went to Memphis, Tennessee on an environmental and economic justice issue, long before the National Environmental Justice Movement was born. He went to Memphis dealing with garbage. You said garbage and civil rights? Yes. Striking garbage workers in Memphis, Tennessee, who were fighting for basic rights in terms of their work, in terms of their health, and in terms of their workplace. And so when we talk about this whole question of of the physical space and place, place matters. And as I said before, racialized place. Jim Crow created racialized place artificially. There's nothing inherently truth about one line drawn over here. This is the good side of the tracks. Over there, that's the bad side. And so when we talk about separate, unequal, as I said before, Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, and we talk about assault on apartheid and what Rosa Parks did, and Dr. King was there, and looking at the fact that if we dismantle apartheid and dismantle separate, unequal, and make it sure that every community should be a livable place, and we should strive to have the safest, the healthiest, the fittest. And we got magazines that give these rankings every year. The best place to live, the greenest place, the cleanest place, the most walkable, the most park-friendly, the most sustainable, the most accessible, and the most livable. And what we talk about, look at the 20 greenest cities, and who's doing the most to get to green? It takes money to go green. It takes money to go green. Did you hear me? It just doesn't happen by itself. My city is number 19, and we're moving up because we're putting pressure in Atlanta to go green. And we say we are a majority African American city, but we can go green, and it will be a darker shade of green. That's what we want. So when we talk about this issue, the healthiest states in the country, look where the healthiest states are. And vulnerable places. It's not by accident that some of the most unhealthiest states in the country, they're not located in Vermont and Idaho and Colorado and New Hampshire. I mean, they're located in the southern United States. That there's a belt that runs across the South where there's a stroke belt, there's a toxic belt, there's a come on down, we'll take anything that other people don't want belt. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's called dumping in Dixie. And so when you look at 7 of the 10 unhealthiest states in the country, 7 out of 10 are located in the South. Also, if we draw a line and look at the poverty, and I left that slide out, there's a poverty belt that runs all the way across from Virginia, going through North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, going all the way across to Texas, where there are counties that are very poor. These are also counties that are unhealthy. These are also counties that, in terms of the environment, is most bespoiled in the country. It's the same area, that same belt that runs across where people are uninsured, that are vulnerable. And so when you talk about calculating and mapping vulnerability, it's very easy to map vulnerability. Hospitals are closing in a lot of places. The Charity Hospital, the public hospital. Hurricane Katrina closed Charity Hospital. It was a disaster. But there's no Katrina in Atlanta that's almost getting ready to close Grady Hospital. The public hospital in Washington, D.C., D.C. General closed its doors. King Drew Hospital in Los Angeles closed their doors. Hospitals are closing. People who don't have insurance, when they get sick, they go to the public hospital. Because if you go to the other hospital, the first thing they ask you, not how you feel, who's going to pay, and what's your insurance? Understand that physically, as I said before, all communities are not created equal. And if you physically live on this artificial line, but it's a real line, on the wrong side of the tracks, you are subject to more health threats. And we got study after study showing that cleaning up the air can extend the lifespan. There's a study that was done by 2 professors at the University of Colorado that showed, it's a 2009 study in New England Journal of Medicine, showed that by cleaning up our air in our city, it's extending lifespan by on average of 5 months. I don't know about you 20-something folks, but at 63, I want my 5 months. So when we talk about cleaning, I mean, they are tangibles in terms of health. So when we talk about this whole question of what are the effects and where are communities and who's affected, even our schools are not off limits. When we look at the study that was done by USA Today, looked at 128,000 schools in the country. It's a 2009 study, 2008, December. Showed that these are red dots. The bigger the dot, the more the pollution. The fact that there's so many industries located close to our schools, and just a few of these schools are being monitored in terms of what's coming out of the smokestacks. Schools located next to refineries, schools located next to smelters, schools located next to very dangerous operations. And we say children are the most vulnerable populations. Their bodies metabolize these toxins in very different ways because they are still developing. Only 3% of these industries actually monitor what's coming out. And so after this study came out in December of 2008, and we got a new administration, the pressure was put on the administration. Something needs to happen. And of course, the EPA administrator, just instantly started to take action on this. Children. I mean, who's going to be against protecting children? This is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. It's not an independent issue. I can't think of anybody who would stand up and say, I am for poisoning children. That's my campaign promise right now. So when we talk about this whole question, and we talk about access to good quality schools and good quality health care, a basic is also having something as basic as a good quality supermarket and place where you can shop for fruits and vegetables and food. And those places that don't have those basic necessities, such as grocery stores, they're called food deserts. And crossing the food desert can be, and searching for food, getting to a place where food is sold outside of your neighborhood. If you don't have a car, it's hard to shop for food and groceries on a bus. And if the bus doesn't go where the grocery stores are, you're in trouble. You have to take a taxi. Poor people taking taxis is very expensive. And so food deserts exist in many of our major cities. This photograph has nothing to do with anything other than the fact I was in Egypt last Christmas. So when we talk about supermarket redlining and how a lot of supermarkets have left many of our urban inner city neighborhoods and have left them to fend for themselves, which has impacted health. And if you can only have to shop out of the corner store or convenience store where you can't get good quality food, good quality fruits and vegetables, etc., other than the high salt, high cholesterol, fast food kind of stuff. So we're talking about devastation. Long before Katrina, there was a problem in New Orleans in terms of grocery stores. After Katrina, it's gotten worse. And if you look at the fact that only a few groceries, there's only one major grocery store in New Orleans East right now. 50,000 people there, and one grocery store. And if you look at the fact that where grocery stores have returned in other parts of the city, but this one area in the east where the population has returned, 75% of the population in New Orleans has come back. But in terms of getting groceries, as the folks in Alabama would say, making groceries is difficult. I don't know if they have that saying in North Carolina, but we used to make groceries in Alabama. It's hard to get, and we're not just talking about low-income communities. In New Orleans East, there are 8 subdivisions that are built on lakes, gated communities. It's affluent African Americans and Vietnamese that have to go long distances to get food. And so when we talk about the fact that we all would like to have a whole food store in our neighborhood, but it costs money to eat healthy. A lot of people say, that's not whole food, that's whole paycheck. Eating healthy costs a little more. But in the long run, you pay less in terms of health. This is a map of Oakland, California. And I like to pick on Oakland because we're in North Carolina. If you look at the fact that Oakland has all of these liquor stores, the yellow dots are liquor stores, and one little green dot, that's the grocery store. So why is it that we got all these liquor stores? I mean, you can get liquor and guns in the same store. I don't know any white people that drink Coke 45. If you look at the fact that we're inundated with all kinds of unhealthy products. This is Chicago. I won't pick on Chicago. I know, Roy, you're from Chicago. But it's easy easier to get a greasy hamburger in Chicago than it is to get an apple and grapes. And so when we talk about getting access and crossing this desert, we want all of our kids to eat healthy and eat fruits and eat, not necessarily, I ain't gonna pick on nobody, but what we end up is getting sick. And so when we talk about this whole phenomena, how do we deal with health? We walk for health. We walk for life. And the fact is that even low-income neighborhoods have a right to a jogging path, a bicycle lane. They say they're not going to use it. They will. Build them and they will come. We're not talking about everybody has to be a marathon runner and run 26 miles. But at the same time, you don't have to be a couch potato. We know that all parks are not created equal. We love to have green parks and, have nice green playgrounds. And the fact is that some of our parks are built next to very dangerous facilities. And parks are located across from refineries. You stand in that park. This is not trick photography, my brothers and sisters. I took this photograph. This is in Norco, Louisiana. That's sandwiched between two refineries. You stand there 15 minutes, you get a headache. Smells like you're pumping gas. Our park's located across. This is in Baytown, Texas, located across from a public housing project. The nation's largest refinery. I'm going to call names. This is ExxonMobil. Across the street. You look at the photograph and say, why is it that this is this is Corpus Christi, Texas. Refinery located next to the community. Another playground. Houses literally next door to refineries. And so when we talk about this whole issue, this is Port Arthur, Texas. This is a public housing project by the name of Carver Homes, as in George Washington Peanut Carver, located next to refineries. And you smell the smoke. It is not the smell of jobs, it's the smell of illnesses. Most of the people in that project has an upper respiratory illness. Am I saying what's coming out of the smokestack is causing asthma? No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that what's coming out of that smokestack is not health enhancing. So when you talk about the issue of the price of dirty power, and I want to talk about these dirty power plants, and we're in the mode of going green and renewables and clean energy and going to solar and wind and biomass and all of that, but we still got these dirty power plants that's spewing pollution, and the most vulnerable population at risk are children and mercury, women. And now studies are showing that women, childbearing age, mercury is showing up in fetuses. And it's looking at the impact of airborne lead from these refineries and from these power plants that's located, what do you think, next to a school. Why would anybody put a school next to a power plant? Or why would anybody put a power plant next to a school? This is not trick photography. These are real live cases of power plants and kilns located next to. Dirty power. We talk about addressing climate change and CO2. We should also address what's coming out that's not a greenhouse gas, but it's also NOx, SOx, PM10, PM2.5, very dangerous stuff that's killing people. And we got the numbers to show the impact of air pollution and excess deaths. The numbers are staggering. The location's very predictable. We know that the southeastern United States has a lot of problems when it comes to power plant pollution. But come on down, we'll burn it. We'll bring it on down. We'll be the last to go to natural gas. We'll be the last to go to solar. We'll be the last to go. We'll still take the dirty power plants. And so when we talk about the dirty dozen, the dirtiest power plants in the country, a lot of them are located in the southern United States. Georgia has some of the top two. When we talk about clean coal, there's no such thing. Oxyboronic. That's like saying giant shrimp. So when we talk about cleaning coal and the lobbies out there spending billions of money to clean the coal, and looking at mountaintop removal, looking at the impact that it's having on the communities that are located in West Virginia and Tennessee, and the fact that a lot of the trees have been knocked down, a lot of the rivers and streams have been basically contaminated. They do provide jobs, but at a cost. And there's a growing movement now to push back from this mountaintop removal. Those are environmental justice issues because the communities that are most affected, no, they're not black communities, but in many cases they're poor. And communities need jobs. Now how do we transition from this dirty industry to a clean industry? That's an equity issue. And so when we talk about, getting, coal out the ground and what it does, it's not just in, West Virginia, it's also out west. And I worked on a case in New Mexico and dealing with Peabody coal and dealing with, the Black Mesa, dealing with the, with the native reservations of what's happening there, the water being basically contaminated, and dealing with, this whole idea of the right to pollute and what happens to communities. And whether it's mining coal or mining uranium, there are problems associated with the extraction and the pollution. Let's go close to home, across the line, TVA. And what happened at TVA and what happened at the Kingston Power Plant and what happened with all of that coal ash that's in impoundments, dirty coal being burned, and the ash is right there stored on site. And what happened the day after my birthday, December 22nd, 2008, where this sludge just washed down and washed out all those people's houses in Roane County and all those homes. 525 million gallons of toxic coal fly ash over dozens of homes, 400 acres. The spill was cleaned up. And this is dirty stuff. Coal ash is not something you want to sprinkle on your Cheerios. This is nasty stuff. When they decided to clean it up and remove the ash, and they decided it's got to go somewhere. It's got to leave East Tennessee, which is predominantly white. And it's got to go somewhere. And where did they decide to take it? It's going to dump it in Dixie Mode. They say we're going to go 300 miles south and ship it by train to this one county called Perry County that is predominantly black and very poor. And they're calling it economic development. We take your coal ash, we take your poison for a price. It's being imposed on people. And then they're saying there's no resistance. That's a lie. The propaganda machine is cranking out lies. The people in that community do not want that stuff dumped in their community. And first EPA said, Region 4 said, there's nobody out there, it's isolated. Wrong again. If you look at where it's going to Uniontown. This is the lady, 80 years old. She's a great-grandmother. 5 generations in that area, across the street from this landfill. There are houses all around this landfill. And the idea that you will take it and say there's nobody out there and there's no impact. The nuclear industry is reinventing itself, but yet and still they're saying they're a clean industry, but there's no place to put this waste, the spent fuel that's still on site. And so where will it go? Will it go to Yucca Mountain? Will it go to Tennessee? Will it go somewhere else? People don't know. But I don't know a whole lot of places saying, bring it to us, we want it. Bring it, the more the better. But there are a lot of people saying we don't want it. Uranium mining has created lots of problems out on the Navajo reservation. And the Western Shoshone, people say there's nobody out in Yucca Mountain. It's isolated. There's nobody out there. Wrong. The Western Shoshone been out there for thousands of years. And they're still there. And so when we talk about these issues, it's healthy to clean up the environment and to get clean energy and clean transportation. These are 2 low-hanging fruit that if we do it right, we can do a whole lot to deal with climate change in terms of greenhouse gases. But we got to do it right. We just can't be talking the talk. Got to do it right. Energy and greenhouse gases, transportation and energy power plants, they're 2 big ones. And so we talk about moving to renewables and getting really into the solar and the biomass, geothermal and hydroelectric and wind, and moving our government, moving our states, moving our city governments in that direction. And young people are very important in that movement. And every social movement is that young people moving the movement. And so when we talk about transportation and energy, as I said before, a third of the greenhouse gases that's produced, it comes from transportation related. That's a third. So if we move to more environment friendly cars and trains and transit systems and alternatives to driving in terms of having more bike lanes and walk trails and redesign and reconfigure our cities so that they are walkable, so that we don't have to drive out of the cul-de-sac to get on the other side to get to the grocery store, that if we had a walk-through, cut-through, we could actually walk. That's design. And so when we talk about building design, we talk about gridlock, we're wasting so much energy stuck in traffic, not going anywhere. We're just wasting gas stuck on the freeway, wasting gas. And gas goes up. And the higher it goes up, and when we saw that spike of gasoline going at $4 a gallon, we saw more people go back to transit or get on transit. We saw, a rush onto Prius. I got a Prius. I drive a Prius. But not because I rushed to it. It's because I drove a Toyota 1994 Toyota Corolla. And in last February, I was driving on the freeway going to my job, and the transmission fell out. I had 200,000 miles on it. It was a Toyota, and they make good cars. I said, well, Toyota. And I said, Prius. Very good. I love my Prius. But the fact is, we have to move beyond Prius. We got to get to zero pollution. And they're getting there. And so when we talk about transportation and building and making Detroit go green in terms of green cars, and we're getting some green cars, and the fact is that it's not green enough. And so we got hybrids, and we're not talking about taking people's, SUVs and Humvees away from them, but we need to have more energy efficient cars so that we don't have to be so dependent on this fuel, this gasoline, and this oil from these foreign countries that don't like us. And so when we talk about, plug-ins and we talk about cars giving us liberty, we know that cars give us freedom and liberty, but they also give us something else. They give us pollution, they give us death. Cars produce a lot of pollution, and so when we talk about building roads and highways, this is Atlanta, rush hour. You build a 50-lane highway, and they'll come, and they'll fill them up. So we have to change the way we fund stuff. And the fact that we fund 80% of transportation dollars going to roads and 20% going to transit, that has to be flipped. And hopefully we can flip that in the next reauthorization of the transportation bill. But if we don't get people organized and mobilized to do that, we'll still get the road building lobbying for that 80% of the transportation dollars. And looking at the stimulus projects that came off of the assembly line, shovel ready after the stimulus dollars, a lot of them were just road projects, bad road projects, and shovels ready meant roads to nowhere, bridges to nowhere, roads to hell. I mean, it's just bridges, you know what I'm talking about. So when we talk about left on the side of the road, a lot of people are still left on the side of the road because they don't own cars. They need transit. They need alternatives to driving. And so when we talk about this issue, making transit available and looking at the co-benefits in terms of mobility, in terms of air quality, in terms of getting, looking at greenhouse gases and climate, we're less dependent in terms of oil, less dependent in terms of looking at location development, looking at reducing smog, having health benefits, looking at this whole idea of where we're likely to get these high spikes in ozone that's going to create health problems for people. I mean, this ain't rocket science. And pollution is not randomly distributed. We know where it is. We know the health gains that we can get by getting people out of cars and allowing people to use transit. In 1996, when we had the Olympics, when you couldn't drive, in Atlanta in terms of the Central Core, you had to take MARTA whether you wanted to or not. We had 2 million people descend on Atlanta for the Olympics, and most of those folks use MARTA, and most of the folks in Atlanta use MARTA. And at that same 2 weeks' time, the air became cleaner. This is in July. Some of the worst, smog, high ozone days. And we saw a 22% drop in automobile use, and a 41%, almost 42% drop in emergency room visits in terms of asthma. There are benefits from doing the right thing when it comes to air quality and co-benefits. Co-benefits from dealing with CO2 and these other pollutants, these criterion air pollutants, and co-benefits from dealing with it in a way that we're talking about climate change, global warming, but we're also talking about health and public health as it relates to impact. Addressing the hot spots. There are communities that are more vulnerable to heat waves, and we saw that in Chicago in 1996. We saw that after Katrina in terms of communities that are more vulnerable to disasters, post-disaster, who's most likely to basically be left high and dry in natural disasters, like the natural disasters that happened in Haiti, in terms of the most vulnerable that are going to be left behind, and that are basically don't have a place to go. Even though natural disasters oftentimes are levelers in terms of the playing field levelers, in terms of reconstruction and recovery and resilience, people who have money and bank accounts and who can withstand the loss in terms of economics, they're more likely to recover quicker, and who can access the healthcare system, including mental health, they're more likely to recover in terms of looking at the post-traumatic stress disorder. So when we talk about the impacts of climate change and the public health implications, and looking at severe storms and in terms of who's left behind, we know the people, the vulnerable population who's left behind. And so what we have to do is to prepare for adaptation strategies that can provide resources to deal with the fact that we need to ensure that we clean up the air. And when we talk about getting people access to heat stations, places where people can go if there's a heat wave, that they can go to cooling stations so that they don't have to stay in their apartments, elderly people who don't want to turn on their air conditioning because they're going to get big bills, and they're on a fixed income. Their Social Security check will be wiped out, and so that has to happen. We know where the hot spots are, the places, the Atlanta, the Baltimore, the Buffalo, the Charleston, the Charlotte, places that are going to get increased days when it comes to bad air days. And we know the heat island effect, where heat is trapped in the urban core areas. This is Atlanta, and you can see how we became more and more urbanized, and we're knocking more trees down, but we are getting hotter and hotter. Hot Atlanta. This is the heat island effect. You can see it expanding. And so the fact is that the most vulnerable population is our children. We know the health effects, asthma, is epidemic. And children of color are more impacted by asthma, hospitalization. And so when we talk about addressing this issue, the right to breathe is a basic human right. And people don't decide, I'm not going to breathe next Thursday. And so when we talk about breathing, that's a basic right. What we're talking about in all of this stuff, pulling it all together, connecting the dots, is that we have to have a just and sustainable plan of action to deal with our energy, our transportation, our housing policy, our transportation policies, our land use policies, our food security policies, urban gardening, urban agriculture, all of this, parks justice, all these things are connected, and that's how our movement to address these issues is various movement, but it's just one movement, just like it's just one book. We have to strive for a healthier and a more sustainable a framework. That means that as we grow, we must grow smarter. And it is not likely that we can achieve a sustainable society unless we address these equity issues, these social justice issues, these legacy issues that have been so intractable, so difficult to change. But if we are to achieve this sustainability, then we have to just come on out the box and just say, we have to address equity across the board. Economic equity, gender equity, racial equity, geographic equity, so all of that, we got to address it. And the way that we address it is by coming together and developing plans that people can live with, and allowing a democratic process to achieve the kinds of things that most people would think would only be achieved in other people's lifetime. I think we can achieve it, in terms of one generation. But it's going to take a lot of work. Students have a lot of work to do. You have a big role in this. And I think students have so much energy. And now, of course, they know everything. And so it means that I'm very optimistic about the future. And last point I want to leave you. I think the fact that we are in a time where I think this climate change issue, that is the number one environmental justice issue on this planet. Because if we don't get it right, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're black or white, or whether you live in the suburbs or you live in the hood, it's going to impact everybody. So that we have to get a handle on this right now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for your lecture, Dr. Bullard. Now, at this moment, we will have a question and answer session. We will actually have 2 mics, an audience going around, 2 roving mics. So we ask that if you have a question, that you please step up to the mic and raise your hand so that our 2 volunteers, they can see you and they can point you out. We're going to keep this at 20 minutes, and please speak into your mics and be very clear and project yourself so that Dr. Bullard can hear all your questions, okay? Thank you.
You got one here? We have one right here.
Oh, me?
Okay, go ahead.
Hi there. I was wondering if you could share with us any communities you know that have very effectively organized and gotten some big pollution out of their communities.
Oh, there are quite a few. And I think the struggles that have occurred over the last, I guess, 15, 20 years, we've seen lots of success stories in Louisiana, as a matter of fact, in Texas, in Chicago. I've done a lot of work on the south side of Chicago, and worked in Outgell Gardens on the south side, the same public housing project that President Obama got his start in, and worked with a lady named Hazel Johnson, who founded her organization in 1982, and she's worked in that area to make people aware and to get some of the pollution out and to start the green up communities. There are communities in New Orleans right now that are basically rebuilding very green and understanding that they're trying to do it right so that that they create a community that is very sustainable and livable, but also affordable. And some of the stuff that the groups are working with Brad Pitt and in terms of that work. Some of the work that we've done in Atlanta, for example, trying to make sure that our public transit system, MARTA, and for years and years, when MARTA was created in the 60s, M-A-R-T-A, Metropolitan Atlanta Transit Authority, a lot of the suburban counties say, we don't want MARTA, because MARTA stands for Moving Africans Rapidly Through Atlanta. And so they decided not to be part of MARTA. And so what we've done is we've tried to expand the public transit system and make it connective so that, and also to move off of the dirty diesel buses to compressed natural gas buses and clean fuel buses. And so we've tried to ensure that MARTA does the right thing when it comes to using transit-oriented development to improve neighborhoods when they build stations. They also use some of the resources to upgrade communities. So we've been, there's some benefits agreements that we work with communities when new development is being put in place, that we work with communities to help them develop plans so that the plans that are being developed are not overlays. They're not plans that are put down on people, but the community becomes part of those plans. So a lot of the work that we've been doing in the last 10 years are dealing with some of the benefits, most of them just stopping something, but also making sure that people get some of the benefits out of those programs, and some of the green jobs issues, and some of the economic development, brownfield redevelopment programs that we've been involved in. So there are a lot of stuff, enough to feel. The Growing Smarter book talks about some of those examples. That's not a plug or commercial, though.
Dr. Bullard, thank you so much for your teaching. I'm with Nuclear Information and Resource Service, and I recently met a woman who grew up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and told me a heartbreaking story about her dad working at the bomb factory. He was African American. If he got contaminated, he wasn't allowed to wash up at work. He had to take his contaminated clothing and self home to clean up, which just totally changes the whole picture for all the dose reconstructions and all the understanding about different populations. I'm just wondering if you've heard anything about this, and I'd like to share her story in writing with you before you leave.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're working with the Scarborough community and the families. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting of 15 poison communities at EPA Region 4 on October 27th, and one of the community residents that wrote up one of the case studies is part of that group. And as a matter of fact, there's if you go to our website and look up, or if you just Google Poison Communities Region 4, the case studies, the Scarborough case study is written up in that case. And Scarborough is a little black community that was just located just outside of the plant in Oak Ridge where they built the bomb, and it was a little segregated community, and the workers there were treated very different in terms of even up until the 50s, and even now, there'd been no compensation, and in terms of a lot of the information was declared national security information. So a lot of stuff is still secret, and some of the stuff is coming out, but the facts surrounding the little Scarborough community is really tragic, and a lot of people, it's been a secret for a long time, but more and more information is getting out now about the workers, but also about the community itself. And that was the community that was the closest to the plant, Y12 or Y something. Y12, yeah.
Hi, thank you. Over here. Thanks for your talk. That was really quite wonderful and entertaining and inspiring, of course. So I was wondering, what do you see as being the ideal interaction between public sector and private sector initiatives?
Yeah, I think today we have a lot of partnerships and public-private partnerships that are taking initiatives to do a lot of good work, whether it's public-private partnerships as it relates to healthy homes, public-private partnerships to deal with asthma intervention, brownfield redevelopment projects to deal with some of the issues as it relates to the green jobs initiatives in terms of public-private. And I think there's when you get that mix of and that good combination of public-private types of initiatives, you can, and you get a balance, and you have good community participation, you can have some good results. And as I said before, you can, if you have an initiative that's being driven from the bottom up by communities in partnership with city, for example, if you talk about looking at these green empowerment zones that are being developed. The first one was in Kansas City. But there are places now where the cities are designating certain areas, geographic areas, to be redeveloped in a green way. And these are areas that oftentimes mirror the old empowerment zone or old community development or old model cities, but now they're taking an approach that they're going to really do it right and target resources to get these communities green. And starting with the schools, the green our schools, green curricula, but also the green what's in them, getting vending machines out and looking at the menu and getting the menu to be healthy and getting in terms of making sure that the air circulation, the water fountains, there's no lead pipes and making sure that the air circulation in the buildings are green and looking at all the things, how you green the buildings and showing that high performance school and green building coming together using public-private resources, the academic performance in the school goes up. And so when you look at those kinds of things, that's a proven success model. And so, and when you look at the cost for the school board in terms of the energy costs, when you deal with the energy and you do the weatherization and you do the kinds of things in terms of the green construction, the light bill and the water bill for the school board goes down. That's a saving. That's money that instead of paying the power company, that's money that could be put back into the curriculum for other kinds of paying teachers and putting in terms of resources for students. So there are payoffs in a lot of ways by doing it right, and you can involve the public and the community, and also you can have businesses that can adopt those schools and provide resources to additional resources to do those kinds of things. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on around the country, and I think the internet is a very good way to share this stuff. So when something happens that's good, get posted. Because a lot of times we don't get our best stories out, and we have they're hidden. A lot of organizations, community-based organizations and NGOs are doing great work, but it's hidden. It's not and it's not front page New York Times. And so the internet has been able to share, and people have been able to do a lot of communication and information sharing. YouTube has been very great about getting the story out real quickly. So the technology is helping a lot, but we got to get a lot of our organizations tech savvy and resources to get tech savvy. Yes.
I would like to first thank you for coming back
okay.
here, and thank you for your life's work and your contribution. I work for the Fish and Wildlife Service, the federal agency, and I review transportation projects, and part of that work involves reviewing National Environmental Policy Act documents as it relates to impacts to natural resources. I know that process also is required for cultural resources and environmental justice issues. A lot of times I get discouraged with what I see in that process, and I just wondered if you could comment on what your experience or knowledge is as it relates to environmental justice issues.
Yeah, well, when we were working to get a lot of the environmental justice guidance and the executive order and getting CEQ to President's Council of Environmental Quality to do, because that's where NEPA comes out of, who's in charge of NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. We wanted to say that the environmental justice analysis should be strengthened, because what we get in a lot of ways is just, in some cases, a 2-paragraph or just a pro forma or just a very skimpy kind of thing. We say that's not sufficient. I've been called on cases where lawsuits have been filed challenging the process, but also the documents themselves as being inadequate. The draft environmental impact statement and the comments that they get, and how much follow through they do in terms of the final document, and so the scoping and all that stuff. So we've been able to deal with some of that. And the first big case that I worked on that we won was a case in Louisiana in Claiborne Parish in northwest Louisiana. It was a case argued in front of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and Citizens Against Nuclear Trash, CANT versus LES, Louisiana Energy Services. This company spent $37 million trying to get an air permit for this, what was supposed to be the first privately owned uranium enrichment plant. They were going to put it in the middle of this little black community, two black communities. One was founded in 1865, and the other was founded in 1910. When they did the draft environmental impact statement, they said, there's nobody out there. There's nothing out there but trees. These two communities had been out there since 1865 and 1910. And so that the analysis did not even look at people who were on well water and who had gardens, how far the closest fire station is, and the emergency response in terms of the roads and whatever. And it was just inadequate. And so I did an analysis of their environmental impact statement, and it was a huge lawsuit. Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund was a lawyer, and of course we won that case. And the judge basically, it was a 3-judge panel, and the NRC basically said, and the fact that in terms of people fished and hunted, and a lot of livelihood was in terms of water quality. They didn't talk about the fact that people fished. They were not anglers. They eat the fish. And so none of that was done. And so when I ripped it to shreds, the judges bought it, and of course we won. We won. This was 1985. So you can win, and you can use the NEPA process, and you can. But again, 2 years later, that was 1989. I'm sorry. 2 years later, 1991, we used the same arguments in a case involving it was the Eastern Navajo. It was a case involving the NRC against this company, Hydroelectric. They wanted to build a uranium mine on the Eastern Navajo Reservation where the water was already poisoned with uranium. People had to drive 15, 20 miles to get water. This is on the reservation. To get water to feed their animals, to drink and bathe in. I mean, there's all kinds of contamination out there. Mine tailings all over the place. We did the analysis and did all that. But 2 years later, we used the same argument. And the judge, there's a 3-judge panel, basically said, no, you can build it. So it depends on the time. This was after U.S. Supreme Court ruling of Alexander v. Sandoval, where we had to prove intentional discrimination. So same argument, and it was even a stronger case in terms of the Navajo Reservation, in terms of the impact of drilling another uranium mine out there in terms of people's water quality and people's animals and their livelihood in terms of the imperil threat. So, but NEPA is a good document, and I think we need NEPA, and yeah.
Hi, thank you very much for your lecture today. I actually have a question, probably concerning of how exactly do we rise above skeptics' issues as far as saying that global climate warming doesn't exist, that this can't be proven, that the Earth naturally gets warmer. How exactly do we uprise from that, and how fast is this movement going as far as, I guess, proving that global warming is real and that we need to do something about it?
Yeah, well, I think there's still a debate, but I think the debate and the weight of the science and the scientists overwhelmingly outnumber the naysayers. And I think the fact that just say for instance, even if it were not the case, having a greener, cleaner fuel, even if it had nothing to do with climate change, all the other nasty stuff that's coming out, more people die each year from air pollution, from the NOx, the SOx, the PM10, from the ozone. I mean, 70,000 people die each year from air pollution. 70,000, that's real. So even if global warming had nothing to do with it, we should have alternative fuels, cleaner energy. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say, well, we don't need to do it because climate change is a hoax. Or how about let's do it because of health? So that's what the environmental justice, climate justice folks are saying. Let's deal with the fact that people are getting sick, and the people that's it's hurting the most are the people that can least afford health care and least afford to move to, you know, Santa Monica on the ocean. So to me, it's a straw man or a straw woman or a straw person that doesn't have a whole lot of debate time left. We experienced that in Copenhagen. There are people who flew over to Copenhagen to say, oh, this climate change meeting is a waste of time, waste of money, blah, 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 blah. And so my thing was, I'm going because I want to connect with groups around the world who are working on climate change, but they're also working on poverty eradication. They're working on issues of energy. They're working on issues in dealing with food security. They're working on issues of water quality. You know, the most deadly pollution in the world right now is water pollution. More babies are dying because of dirty water. And so when we talk about cleaning up the water and cleaning up, you know, skies and people are, you know, in poor countries, people are still cooking with wood and coal inside and getting sick. So when we talk about these issues, we put it in the context of how it's connected. And so not to just talk about parts per billion when it comes to CO2. That's too narrow for us, for the climate justice people. Okay? Here. Yes, thank you.
Dr. Bullard.
Yes.
My name is Gloria Howard Free, and I am a mountain woman native to Asheville.
Okay.
And I choose for you to know it is an honor to be in your presence and in the presence with this assembly.
Well, thank you.
I have really been challenged, stimulated, and as I told you upon meeting you, you're just like manna out of heaven. So thank you for coming. I'm inspired, and I choose to know each of us is here as a gift to spread abroad what we've learned here tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm someone who likes to leave with action steps. What is the one thing that we should do after we leave this auditorium tonight?
Well, I think it's important that we connect. We connect with, if you're students, you need to connect with a student organization, a campus organization. And if you want to take it, you know, you may be doing this already, in terms of localizing the issue, in terms of how are you going to deal with some of these issues on campus, in terms of making sure that the campus is doing everything it can to go green, and to move it off campus to say, okay, now let's work with communities. And I know some of that is starting to work so that we create this synergy with the community in Asheville to use the university as an incubation and as a resource to work with, not to lead and not to hover over, but to work in partnership with. And I think, you know, identify where there are groups, where there are resource gaps, and so how you can plug into organizations, into movements that are already started, organizations that are already working on things. And I know there's a lot of things going on, but connecting those organizations to things that are going on, because everybody is busy working on different things, but to come together and to use forums like this to start interacting and start talking to people. You know, I went to Copenhagen. I met a lot of my brothers and sisters I hadn't seen in a long time in the United States. I saw them, went all over there to say, what are you doing? He said, okay, well, this is what we want. I didn't know that. And the next thing we know, we're going back, we're reconnecting, recommunicating. So I think connecting, there's no substitute for organizing, getting things done, having a plan, having a strategy, having a time frame, short term, mid-term, long term. to accomplish. And you can track that, and you can measure where you are. And everybody needs even if it's a small incremental victory, you need a victory. That's human nature. And celebrate your victories, but don't celebrate too long, because you got more work to do. Thank you. Okay, one more. You said one more? Okay.
Dr. Bullard, I also am very happy to be here tonight to hear you speak. It seems to me that the individuals and the corporations who are the greatest perpetrators of environmental degradations are also the ones who both benefit and control our current economic systems. And I was wondering if you had anything to say about the relationship between environmental racism and capitalism.
Yeah, well, it's a big one. Yeah. We have to, that hits it on the head. The fact is that the people who have the most and create the most destruction and pollution, when it comes to correcting this, they have to give up the most. You have to understand that when you translate that into world global issue, that means that we have to change what we do. We cannot stay in this whole mode of a box in a box in a box. You buy a tube of toothpaste, the toothpaste is in a tube, the tube is in a box, the box is in plastic. And you can never get all the toothpaste out of the box. So you throw away the box, the plastic, and the toothpaste. And my grandma said, you don't need toothpaste. You can brush your teeth with baking soda. Now they got baking soda toothpaste that's in a tube, in a box, in a plastic. So changing a mindset. And so what it means that when we are talking about solving a lot of these problems, the most affluent parts of our society will have to shift. We're not talking about taking their SUV and taking their Mercedes. It means that they have to shift in terms of what our footprint is in terms of the larger scheme of things. And so it means that what we judge success as having, this 5-car garage in the suburbs, blah, 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 that's success. And in order to get more, you never can get enough. That's that capitalism mode and greed and feeding on, more, and step on everybody to get where you are. And there got to be an underclass to exploit. That's a lot of the problem that's created this, and looking at nature itself as something to be exploited, dominated, and controlled, as opposed to nature is something that we as humans, which is part of nature, we're not even the most important part, but we are the most destructive part. So it means that how do we live in harmony with nature in a way that we can have a standard of living? We're not talking about going back to the Stone Age or giving up whatever, but it means that there has to be some change in the way that we consume, and that we just overconsume and we're so wasteful. That has to change. And people who are poor and who are at the bottom, they are less wasteful. In terms of, if you don't have a whole lot, you're not throwing away a whole lot. There's a direct correlation between per capita income and the generation of waste. The more money you have, the more waste you produce. That ain't rocket science. You don't need a Craig computer to compute that. Look at how many garbage cans rich people got in front of their house, and look how many garbage cans poor people got. That's the old garbage theory. So capitalism modifying in a way that you're moving to more of a social welfare state. And we're moving there. I won't say socialism, because that got into the big S word. But changing that whole consumption model that capitalism is based on, consuming more, getting more in debt, buying more, that has to change, because that more that you're buying and whatever, and making things planned obsolescence. Cars used to, long time ago, long before a lot of you were born, used to get 50,000 miles, 5-year warranty, 50,000 miles. You could drive 10 years in a car. And then they stopped making good cars in general in Detroit, and then they stopped giving you a 5-year, 50,000 mile warranty. And that's when the Japanese started to say, hey, we're going to give you good cars. And that's when they started making good cars. Now they're getting back to giving long warranties and giving good cars. And when Detroit start making good products, and they're beginning to make good products, people will start buying good products. Consumers oftentimes dictate, but we're not good consumers in terms of education. We're not educated consumers. We'll buy convenient, throwaway, and we become a throwaway society, a wasteful society, and that is non-sustainable. Non-sustainable. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay, just one. All right, we're going to be kind, and we're going to take one more question. I feel like a bad guy. This is the fourth time I snatched Dr. Bullitt from a group of people. We're going to take one more question, and he will be in the lobby, and he will be autographing and signing books afterwards. So one more question, and that's it.
Dr. Bullitt, this is not a question. This is a connect and reaffirmation of connecting the puzzle pieces, the dots or lacing of the shoes. As a card-carrying member of the Asheville branch of the NAACP, we wish you greetings and welcome to the land of the sky from President John Hayes and Miss Sophie Dixon.
Thank you.
As a member of the Southside organization, we wish you welcome as a member of the Voices of Parents Educational Group. You have reaffirmed the stance that we are taking, and Brother Dwayne, yes, I will be contacting you, that we're on the right step. In fact, UNCA was on the right step, and let me make this statement to the African American or Black Students Association at UNCA. I'm sorry I hadn't recontacted you. I am a member of the original organization with Pete McDaniels and Jamal Jabali, who started the Black Arts Festival here at UNCA. We want you to know that you are a state chartered organization. We will be contacting you, and we're on a collateral and corroborative task and goal of connecting the dots. The State of Black Asheville Conference. The State of Black Asheville Conference was on the right track. What it did was, as bold as Dr. Bullitt has been, I'll say, it was an embarrassment to the individuals here, because after about 2 or 3 sessions, they couldn't clearly show any progressive point. They termed it as not being able to track the progress. The trouble is that it's progressively got worse instead of gotten better, so they decided, well, we won't do it anymore because we can't show any progressive point. And the one thing that we shall attempt to do, and what has to be done across this nation, is you got to bring it up from the roots, from the foundation, and from the cornerstone. If the grassroots level bring it up and shout the quake, then the ones that are on top can't deny it because they didn't start it. We thank you again, and we welcome you to the land of the sky.
Thank you.